I've been looking forward to this one. He's a longtime NBA reporter. He's worked at the national level for years and now covers the Portland Trail Blazers full time. Sean Highkin with the Rose Garden Report. Thanks for joining us, man.
How you doing, Orlando?
Life is good. Sean, you've been to every Blazers media availability. I see you there all the time, including Scoot Henderson and Brandon Miller. And that's where I want to start. Who left a strong impression on you?
Just purely from a media interview standpoint, you know this, obviously. We don't get to watch their actual workouts. All we really see is what they show us on social media, like what the team puts out. But I was very, very impressed with Scoot Henderson in terms of, from the interview, just the personality stuff. I've heard nothing but good things about him from that regard. So I think just based on the limited intel that we're actually able to get at these workouts, that's kind of where I would lean. But it's all very dependent on what Charlotte does at number 2, which is obviously, very much up in the air right now.
Let's dive right in. How would you describe the value of the 3rd overall pick?
It's pretty valuable. I mean, this is a draft where obviously everybody knows Victor Wembanyama is going to go number 1. There's no drama there, but both Scoot Henderson and Brandon Miller are the types of prospects, the way that they have been talked about, throughout this past year and throughout the whole pre-draft process, that in most drafts that didn't have somebody like Victor Wembanyama in there, they both would be in the mix to be the number 1 overall pick. So Portland having something like that to offer, whether they end up trading the pick or they decide to keep it and take one of those guys for themselves, it's a pretty valuable pick, which is why, as much as they are shopping the pick or they are taking offers for the pick, I don't think it's a lock that they trade it. If they don't see an offer that they think values the pick the way that they value it, they might just not trade it. But it's a pretty valuable piece.
I love that you're saying that. And Sean, I'm sure you get asked this all the time because I do. What should the Blazers do with the 3rd pick?
Depends on what they get as far as trade offers. I mean, I don't think they should trade the pick just to trade the pick. If it's just you're overpaying for a guy that's a quote unquote win now guy that's not really a needle mover, like these rumors about New Orleans being interested in trading up for the pick. I don't think Brandon Ingram would necessarily qualify as somebody that would be worth trading the 3rd pick for. I do think Zion Williamson would, with the health risks being what it is. I think if they can get somebody like that put on the table, which I think there's a chance that they can, then they should probably move the pick. But if they don't get an offer that they like, then I think the highest value play to make would be to just keep the pick and take whichever of Scoot Henderson or Brandon Miller is there.
Use the word rumors. And I mean, the rumors and reports, they're coming fast and furious. Are you noticing any trends as we head into the final week leading up to the draft?
Well, things are starting to heat up. They moved up in the lottery from the 5th worst odds, or for the 5th best odds to get the number 1 overall pick. They moved up to number 3 in the actual lottery. And kind of the buzz that night and throughout that week at the Combine in Chicago, which I was at, was, they're going to try to move 3 and Simons for the pick, but, I don't know how valuable it is, don't know how much they're going to be able to get. Now it's kind of gone the other way, where it's like teams that better blow them away with an offer if they're even going to move this pick, especially, attached to Anthony Simons, who's, a good young player who still has some upside. So it has kind of shifted over the last month or so since, it's actually been exactly a month. It's May 16th was the lottery day. It's June 16th now. So I think we're starting to see now, as we get less than a week out from the draft, how many teams actually want one of these top 2 or 3 picks and what kind of offers are going to be out there. And I think it's going to only keep heating up between now and the draft.
And so much depends on what the Hornets do at number 2. And there's a lot of action surrounding the Hornets. Do you think that Michael Jordan selling his majority stake in the team will have any impact on what the Hornets do in the draft?
I mean, I'm sure it'll have some impact, but from everything I've read and a few people I've talked to who are plugged in over there, I don't think it's going to be nearly as radical of a shift as, let's say, this past trade deadline, like a day before the trade deadline, Matt Ishbia officially took over as the owner of the Phoenix Suns. And then within the first 24 hours that he owned the team, he just, issued this, demand of trade everything for Kevin Durant. I don't think it's going to be this type of a radical shift. The guy that's buying the majority stake from Michael Jordan was already a minority investor. I have heard that Michael Jordan is still going to have a say and still going to be calling the shots at least until July 1st. So I don't think this development today with the Hornets being sold really just came out of nowhere and it's going to completely throw off what they were already going to be doing. Mitch Kupchak is still the general manager, and as far as I know, he's still going to have a pretty big say in it. So I don't think it's going to really change what they end up doing one way or the other. With that said, I don't really have a feel for whether they like Scoot Henderson or Brandon Miller more. The buzz has been Miller basically since lottery night. But if you remember last year at the draft, it was pretty much everybody, the whole week going into the draft, everybody was saying, Jabari Smith Jr. is going to be the number one pick. It's locked in, it's locked in, it's locked in. And then 24 hours before the draft, the betting line started to move wildly, and Paolo Banchero ended up being the number one pick. So I don't want to say with too much certainty that, Charlotte is going to take Scoot Henderson or Charlotte is going to take Brandon Miller. I think it's still up in the air. All the signs point to Brandon Miller, but that could just be kind of posturing to try to get whatever teams are interested in trading with Portland to move up for Scoot Henderson. Charlotte could be trying to get them to say, hey, maybe we should trade with Charlotte instead.
What would you describe draft night like? What do you think draft night is going to be like for the Blazers front office, especially once they're on the clock?
It's going to be pretty chaotic, and especially because, the draft, whatever time the draft starts, we know who's going number one. There's no mystery or drama there. When Charlotte does whatever Charlotte does, whether they take Scoot Henderson or Brandon Miller or trade the pick to somebody who wants to take one of those two guys, once they know which of those two guys is or isn't going to be on the board at number 3, I'm sure Joe Cronin and his staff have been working since the day they found out the lottery results with different teams on different contingencies about, like, if Scoot is available, we have this trade ready to go, or, this is a framework that we're discussing. And if Brandon Miller is here, this is a framework with another team that maybe we can discuss. Like, I'm sure they have they have a whole decision tree ready to go. And, they're going to have to make a decision quickly in that 5 minutes that they're on the clock, but they're not going to be starting these trade talks while they're on the clock. So it's going to be pretty chaotic, but I think they've already been laying the groundwork over the past month.
You've had a chance to talk to General Manager Joe Cronin a number of different times, and you had a chance to cover last year's draft as well. What did you take away from the way that they handled things, especially when it was their turn to pick?
They like upside. We saw them take Shaedon Sharpe as opposed to Dyson Daniels, who was the other guy that was in the mix, who ended up going one pick later to New Orleans. And he was seen as more of a ready-made, can contribute, be a rotation player from day one. Whereas Shaedon Sharpe, there's more upside there, but it was going to take longer for him to get ready. And they went for the upside, which is why I think that if, they're going to, whatever they think the highest upside play is, whether it's keeping the pick or trading the pick, that's what they're going to do.
When you talk to national writers, you're very connected around the league. How do you describe the situation that the Blazers have on their hands here this offseason?
Well, this is one of the most pivotal off seasons that they've ever had. I would argue it's the most, fork in the road type of off season that they've had since this 2007 draft, when they had the number 1 overall pick and were deciding between Greg Oden and Kevin Durant. They're either going to go all in on, trade this pick and other stuff to try to get more win now talent to surround Damian Lillard with, or they're going to draft a player and either try to do the middle path of, trying to develop young talent while also trying to surround Dame with the type of talent that he can compete with, or, maybe they decide to rebuild and go in a different direction. I don't think that's what's going to happen, but we're going to find out a lot more one way or the other on draft night.
I'll leave you with this one, Sean. Overall, what are you looking forward to in this year's draft?
It being over. I just want to know you hear so much stuff. It's just, especially this time of year, and especially the closer it gets to the draft, it's just coming at you from all directions, and you never know what's real and what's someone putting something out there because they want something to be out there because it benefits them for leverage or something. I just want to know what's going to happen one way or the other.
I think so many people here in Rip City can agree with you. He is Sean Highkin with the Rose Garden Report. Make sure to follow him on Twitter, subscribe, and support the man. He is doing awesome work, and he is plugged in with the Portland Trail Blazers. Thanks for rocking with us, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.